At 65, I didn't expect a furniture delivery to change my life. I expected creaky knees. I expected quiet mornings and earlier bedtimes. I expected my world to grow smaller, not wider, but I did not expect him. The doorbell rang at exactly 10 in the morning, sharp and certain, cutting through the stillness of my house like a stone breaking glass. I had been awake since 6, I always was. Age does that to you. Sleep becomes light, fragile. Memories become louder than dreams. I checked my reflection one last time in the hallway mirror before opening the door. The glue sweater. The good jeans. A soft touch of powder. Revlon's Toast of New York, carefully applied. White diamonds at my wrists. Get a grip, I muttered. When I opened the door, the October air rushed in first, cool and bright. And then I saw him. He stood tall on my porch, broad shoulders filling out his work shirt, dark hair neatly trimmed, tool belt resting low on his hips. His smile was easy, unforced, the kind that reached his eyes. "Miss Mitchell?" he asked. "Yes," I said, and my voice came out thinner than I'd intended. "I'm Jake. Here to assemble your wardrobe." Jake, it felt strange. How a single name could settle somewhere deep in your chest. "Well, don't just stand there," I said quickly, stepping aside. "Come in before the neighbors think I'm interrogating you." He laughed softly as he stepped inside, wiping his boots carefully on the mat without being asked. That small act of consideration made something inside me soften. The house must have looked old to him. The wallpaper slightly faded. The photographs lining the walls. 40 years of birthdays, graduations, Christmas mornings. My David smiling from nearly every frame. "Beautiful home," Jake said, glancing around. "It's lived in," I replied. "That's the best kind." I led him upstairs, suddenly aware of the sound of my own breathing, the rhythm of his footsteps behind me. I hadn't walked up these stairs with a man following me in 7 years. 7 years, 1 month, and 18 days. The bedroom door felt unusual when I pushed it open. "This is it," I said. Sunlight streamed through the window, catching dust in the air. The old oak wardrobe stood against the far wall, solid and dignified, like it had earned its place. Jake walked toward it and ran a hand along the wood. "They don't make them like this anymore." "No," I said softly. "They don't." He began unpacking the new wardrobe parts with careful efficiency, laying them out across the carpet. I turned to the old wardrobe and opened its doors. Inside hung the remains of a life. David's empty side had stayed untouched. I told myself I kept it that way because I wasn't ready. The truth was simpler. Moving his things would mean admitting he wasn't coming back. "I can empty it if you'd like," Jake offered gently. "No," I said too quickly. He nodded and turned away, giving me privacy without making a show of it. I began lifting my clothes out, folding them onto the bed. Sweaters, blouses, dresses I hadn't worn in years but couldn't bear to part with. My hands trembled slightly when I reached David's side. His flannel shirt still hung there. The scent was gone, of course. 7 years erases even the strongest traces. But memory doesn't need scent, it fills in what time steals. "You okay?" Jake's voice was soft, careful. I hadn't realized I'd stopped moving. "Yes," I said, swallowing. "Just old ghosts." He didn't ask more. He simply nodded, as if that explanation made perfect sense. As I emptied the last drawer, I found the small wooden box where David kept his cufflinks. I held it for a moment longer than necessary. "Find something special?" Jake asked. 42 years, I replied. Hard not to find something special in that. He was quiet for a moment. "My dad passed 5 years ago," he said finally. "Mom still keeps his boots by the back door." I looked at him then, really looked at him. "I'm sorry," I said. He gave a small shrug. "You don't stop missing them. You just learn how to carry it." Yes. That was it exactly. He understood. The dismantling of the old wardrobe felt strangely ceremonial. Piece by piece, Jake removed the screws, the hinges, the panels. The wood gave soft sighs as it came apart, like it too knew its time that passed. I sat on the edge of the bed and watched. His movements were steady, deliberate. There was confidence in the way he handled his tools. Strength but not carelessness. When he rolled up his sleeves, I noticed the muscles in his forearms flexing with each turn of the screwdriver. I looked away immediately. Lord Beverly. The new wardrobe began to take shape slowly. Then shelves. Then the base. Could you hold this steady for me? He asked. I stood and moved beside him. The wooden panel was taller than I was. I placed my hands where he indicated. Just a little higher. He murmured, stepping. Arm brushed mine. It was accidental, innocent. But the warmth of it spread through me like a struck match. He reached over to guide my hand slightly upward, his fingers briefly covering mine. My breath caught. 7 years is a long time to go without being touched. Not by accident. Not at all. He pulled his hand away quickly, unaware of the storm he'd just stirred. There, he said. Perfect. Perfect. The word lingered in the air. We worked together quietly after that. Sliding pieces into place. Aligning brackets. Tightening screws. At one point, he pushed a large shelf into a narrow opening, adjusting the angle carefully. Almost, he muttered. Almost. With a firm shove, it clicked into place. It went in, I exclaimed without thinking. Silence. Heat flooded my face instantly. Jake froze for half a second before slowly turning his head toward me. Our eyes met. There was recognition, not mockery, not embarrassment. Something warmer. Perfect fit, he said quietly. The way he said it made my knees feel unsteady. I'd like more coffee, sure. He replied. Though he didn't break eye contact right away. I hurried downstairs, pressing my hand against my chest. What was happening to me? I poured fresh coffee, trying to steady my breathing. My reflection in the kitchen window startled me. My cheeks were flushed. My eyes were alive. When I returned upstairs, Jake was standing, stretching his back. His shirt lifted slightly as he raised his arms, revealing a glimpse of skin at his waist. I forced myself to focus on the coffee tray. He took the mug from me, our fingers brushing this time. Not accidental. Not entirely. Neither of us pulled away immediately. The air between us shifted. Bev, he said softly. The way he said my name felt different now. Less formal, more intimate. Yes. He hesitated, then shook his head slightly. Nothing. But it wasn't nothing. The mirrored doors were the final step. He lifted one carefully and positioned it onto the track. Hold it steady, he instructed. I stood close again, closer than before. My reflection stared back at me from the unfinished surface of the mirror. An older woman with silver hair. Soft lines around her eyes. A faint flush in her cheeks. And behind her, a younger man watching her as if she were something worth looking at. He adjusted the door. Then released it gently. It slid smoothly into place. There, he said. The second door followed. When it was done, he stepped back. Take a look. I turned toward the fully assembled wardrobe. The mirrors reflected the entire room, doubling the space, brightening everything. And there we were. Side by side. For a moment, neither of us spoke. I saw us as strangers might. Not a widow and a delivery man. Not 65 and 30-something. Just two people standing close enough to feel each other's warmth. Jake's gaze met mine in the reflection. You look beautiful, he said quietly. The words hit me harder than I expected. I opened my mouth to protest, to deflect, to laugh it off. But I didn't. Because for the first time in 7 years, I didn't feel invisible. And that terrified me, and thrilled me, all at once. I swallowed before answering him. Don't, I said softly. Don't what? His voice wasn't teasing. It was careful. Don't say things like that unless you mean them. He didn't look away. I don't say things I don't mean. The room felt smaller suddenly, though the mirrors made it look twice its size. I could hear the faint ticking of the hallway clock downstairs, the distant hum of a passing car. Every ordinary sound felt amplified against the silence between us. I'm 65, I said, not sure why I felt the need to remind him. I know, he replied gently. You told me. That's not what I meant. The way he said it, steady, without awkwardness, made something inside me tremble. I turned away from the mirror because it felt too honest. Too revealing. Instead, I began gathering the old wardrobe's remaining hardware from the dresser, stacking screws into a small pile. You should probably get back to work, I murmured, finishing touches and all. It's finished, he said. I looked up. It's done, he repeated, just need to check it, make sure you're happy. Happy. That word used to be simple. Now it felt complicated. I walked toward the new wardrobe and slid one of the mirrored doors open. It moved effortlessly, smooth and silent. No sticking, no resistance. Change can be refreshing. His words from earlier floated back to me. It's beautiful, I admitted. You did a wonderful job. Did, he corrected lightly. I laughed under my breath. I mostly stood there and got in your way. You didn't get in my way. There was something in his tone that made my breath hitch again. He stepped closer, not touching. Just close enough that I could feel the heat radiating from him. Can I ask you something, he said. My heart immediately began that wild flutter again. That depends. Why did you really decide to replace the old one? The question caught me off guard. My daughter nagged me into it, I answered automatically. He waited. He didn't look convinced. I let out a slow breath. Because it was stuck, I said finally. The drawer. No, I shook my head. He didn't interrupt. Everything in this room has been exactly the same for years. I kept it that way because I thought, if I didn't change anything, then nothing was really gone. Like I can freeze time. Keep him here somehow. My voice wavered. But time doesn't freeze, I continued. It just sits heavy. Jake nodded slowly. My mom did that after Dad passed, he said. Didn't move his chair. Didn't touch his side of the closet. It was like she was afraid that if she let the house breathe again, she'd lose him for good. That's exactly it, I whispered. Silence stretched between us again, but it didn't feel awkward. It felt full. You're allowed to breathe, Bev, he said softly. 3 simple words. And they cracked something open inside me. I hadn't realized how tightly I'd holding everything together. How carefully I'd folded myself into a smaller, quieter version of who I used to be. Widow, grandmother, retired teacher, safe labels, contained. But standing there in front of those mirrors, I saw something else, a woman who was still alive. A woman who still felt things. That realization scared me almost as much as it thrilled me. You should probably pack up, I said. Because the intensity in the room was becoming too much. He didn't argue. He bent down to gather his tools, moving slowly, as if giving me time to steady myself. I watched his hands again, capable, strong. Hands that built things. Fixed things. David's hands had been like that. The thought should have made me feel guilty. It didn't. That surprised me most of all. When Jake stood again, toolbox in hand, the space between us felt fragile. I'll need your signature, he said, pulling a small digital pad from his pocket. Of course. Business. I stepped closer to sign, aware of how near we were. The scent of his aftershave mixed with my perfume. Something warm and clean and slightly sweet. I signed my name carefully, my handwriting a little shakier than usual. There you go, I said, handing it back. He took it, but didn't immediately step away. Bev, he said quietly. Yes. If you ever need anything adjusted or fixed, you can call the store and ask for me. The pause before "or fixed" was subtle. But I heard it. I'm sure your schedule is very busy, I replied, trying to keep my voice even. I'd make time. The words landed gently but firmly. Before I could respond, he glanced toward the door, then back at me. Would it be terribly inappropriate? He began carefully. If I asked you something not related to furniture? My pulse pounded in my ears. That depends on what you're asking. He exhaled slowly. Would you maybe want to get coffee sometime? Not because you made a good pot upstairs. A faint smile tugged at his mouth. But because I'd like to sit across from you again. For a second, the world went very quiet. Such an ordinary thing, and yet it felt monumental. My first instinct was to say no, to retreat. To protect the safe, predictable, quiet life I'd built. But another voice inside me, a softer, braver one, whispered, why not? You're what? I said gently, 30. 32. I have grandchildren in high school. You could date someone your own age. I could. But you're asking me. Less. No hesitation. No apology. No embarrassment. I studied his face, searching for mockery or pity or some kind of strange curiosity. I found none. Only sincerity, and something else. Interest. Real unmistakable interest. Why? I asked softly. He considered that for a moment. Because you're easy to talk to, he said. Because you laugh like you mean it. Because you're stronger than you think you are. His eyes softened. And because when you look at me, you don't look through me. My throat tightened, invisible. That was the word I'd been living with for years. And he had just quietly told me he saw me. I don't want to be someone's rebellion, I said carefully. Or a story you tell your buddies. You wouldn't be. He replied firmly. I don't play games like that. The conviction in his voice steadied something inside me. The mirrors behind him reflected us again. Two figures suspended in a moment neither of us had expected when the doorbell rang that morning. I thought of David. Of 42 years. Of the love we had built. The life we had shared. Loving again didn't erase that. Breathing again didn't betray him. He had loved me alive. Not frozen. Not paused. Alive. I don't know what this would look like, I admitted. Neither do I, Jake said. But we could figure it out. My heart pounded so hard I wondered if he could hear it. Just coffee, he added gently. 1 cup, public place. No wardrobe assembly involved. A laugh slipped out of me before I could stop it. You're very persistent. I measure twice, he said softly. Cut once. The familiar phrase made my chest ache and warm at the same time. I looked at the new wardrobe one last time. Smooth doors, clear reflection. Room to breathe. Yes, I heard myself say. The word felt terrifying and exhilarating. Yes, I'll have coffee with you. For a split second, relief washed across his face so openly that it made my knees weak. Saturday, he asked. Saturday'd. He nodded slowly, as if committing it to memory. I'll pick you up at 10. Pick me up. It had been years since anyone had said those words to me. You don't have to, want to. I hesitated, then gave him my address formally even though he clearly already knew it. He smiled. I know where you live, Bev. The playful edge in his voice made heat rise to my cheeks again. He moved toward the door, toolbox in hand, then paused. I'm glad your daughter convinced you to replace that wardrobe, he said quietly. So am I replied. And for the first time in a very long while, I wasn't just talking about furniture. When the front door closed behind him, the house felt different. Not quieter, not louder, just shifted. I walked slowly back upstairs and stood in front of the mirrored doors. The woman staring back at me looked startled, alive, hopeful, afraid. All at once. At 65, I had expected my life to shrink. Instead, it had just expanded. And Saturday suddenly felt very far away. Saturday came slower than any week in recent memory. Monday felt like a month. Tuesday dragged its feet. By Wednesday I had reorganized the entire wardrobe twice, as if neatly folded sweaters could calm the restless energy under my skin. I told myself I was being ridiculous. It was coffee. Just coffee. I had coffee with Marge from church every other Thursday. I had coffee with my daughter when she visited. Coffee was harmless. But this didn't feel harmless. It felt like standing on the edge of something. I hadn't told anyone. Not Sarah. Not even Marge. What would I even say? Oh, by the way, I have a coffee date with a man half my age who built my wardrobe. The thought made me both laugh and panic. Friday night, I stood in front of the mirrored doors for a long time. I tried on 3 different blouses. A soft cream one, 2 granule, a floral one, 2 grandmotherly. Finally, I settled on a deep green sweater that made my eyes look brighter than usual. I brushed my silver hair carefully, letting it fall naturally around my shoulders. A touch of mascara, a little blush, Revlon's Toast of New York, white diamonds. Hands trembled slightly as I fastened my pearl studs. Get a grip, I whispered to my reflection. But my reflection looked nervous, and excited, and something else, hopeful. Saturday morning arrived with clear skies and crisp air. I'd been awake since 5. By 9:30 I was pacing the living room. At 9:58, I saw a dark truck pull up in front of the house. My heart nearly leapt into my throat. He stepped out wearing jeans instead of his uniform. A dark jacket. Clean, simple, effortlessly handsome. I opened the door before he could knock. "Morning," he said, that same warm smile spreading across his face. "Good morning," I replied, hoping my voice didn't betray the storm inside me. He paused for a second, looking at me. He exhaled softly. Heat flooded my cheeks. "Careful," I said lightly. "I might start believing you." "I hope you do." The way he said it wasn't flirtatious, it was sincere. He opened the passenger door of his truck for me, and I couldn't remember the last time anyone had done that. The seat was higher than I was used to, and he instinctively placed a steadying hand at my elbow as I climbed in. The touch was brief, but intentional. We drove toward a small cafe near the river, one I'd passed dozens of times but never gone inside. Exposed brick walls, big windows, plants hanging in the corners. Young couples sat at tables, laptops open, fingers flying across keyboards. For a moment, self-consciousness crept in. We stood out, I felt it. But Jake didn't hesitate. He walked in beside me as if this were the most natural thing in the world. "What are you having?" he asked. "Black," I replied automatically. He smiled. "Strong." "Very." We found a small table by the window. For a few seconds neither of us spoke. This was different from the bedroom. Different from sawdust and sunlight and shared shelves. This was intentional. "So," he said gently, "how does it feel to be out in public with you?" I asked. He chuckled. "That obvious? I was a high school literature teacher for 30 years. I can read subtext." "And what's the subtext saying?" "That I'm aware of every person in this cafe who might be wondering what we're doing sitting together." "And what are we doing?" he asked quietly. I held his gaze. "We're having coffee." "Exactly." His calmness steadied me again. We talked at first about simple things: his job, my years teaching, his mom's cooking, my grandkids' soccer games. But gradually, the conversation deepened. "I haven't dated since my husband passed," I admitted at one point. 7 years is a long time," he said. "Yes." "Was it by choice?" The question wasn't intrusive, it was curious. I think at first it was grief. Then it became habit. Then it became fear. Fear of what? Of starting over. Of comparison. Of being disappointing someone else. I paused. Of people thinking I should know better at my age. He leaned back slightly, studying me. "Who decides what you should know better about?" "Society," I said with a faint smile. "My children. The invisible rulebook that says widows past 60 are supposed to take up knitting and wait quietly." "And what do you think?" I took a slow sip of coffee. "I think I'm tired of waiting quietly." The words surprised me with their force. Jake's eyes softened. "I'm not looking to replace anything," he said carefully. "I'm not trying to compete with a 42-year love story. That's not possible. And I wouldn't want to." Relief loosened something in my chest. He continued, choosing his words thoughtfully, "I enjoy being around you. You make me think. You make me feel calm. And sometimes you make me a little nervous." "Nervous?" I raised an eyebrow. "In a good way." I laughed softly. "You make me nervous too." I noticed. That dimple appeared again. We finished our coffee, but neither of us rushed to leave. Eventually, we walked along the river afterward. The air was crisp, leaves crunching underfoot. A few people passed us, bundled in light jackets. At some point our hands brushed. This time, neither of us pretended it was accidental. His fingers slid gently between mine. Warm, steady. My breath caught. It had been 7 years, 1 month, and 22 days since I'd held a man's hand. I waited for guilt to crash over me. It didn't. Instead, there was a quiet sense of rightness. Not because it was him. Not because it was romance. But because it meant I was still capable of feeling. We walked like that for several minutes, neither speaking. Finally, I broke the silence. "My daughter is going to lose her mind." Jake laughed. "That bad?" "She's protective, and opinionated." "Fair. And my son will try to be polite while calculating your exact age difference." "I'm ready," he said lightly. "You might not be." He squeezed my hand gently. "Bev." The way he said my name made me look up. I'm not afraid of conversations. I am, I admitted. Why? Because I don't want this to feel foolish. It doesn't. It might to them. He stopped walking then, turning to face me fully. Do you feel foolish right now? I searched myself. The answer surprised me. No. Then start there. Such simple logic. We resumed walking, hands still linked. For the first time in years, I wasn't thinking about what I had lost. I was thinking about what might still be possible. When he drove me home, neither of us rushed to get out of the truck. I had a really good time. He said quietly. So did I. Can I see you again? The question felt softer this time, less risky. Yes, I said without hesitation. Relief flickered across his face again. He stepped out to open my door. When I turned to thank him, we were standing close. Very close. His hand rested lightly at my waist, not possessive, not urgent. Just there. I'm gonna ask something, he said gently. And you can say no. My pulse raced. Okay, can I kiss you? The world narrowed to the space between us. 7 years. 1 month. 22 days. I had forgotten what that question felt like. Yes. I leaned in slowly, giving me time to change my mind. I didn't. His lips brushed mine softly at first, tentative, respectful. Warm. Not hurried, demanding, just present. Something inside me unlocked. When he pulled back slightly, his forehead rested lightly against mine. You okay? He asked. I let out a shaky breath. No, I said honestly. I'm not okay. Concern flashed across his face. I smiled. I'm better than okay. And for the first time since I'd watched paramedics wee my husband out of this house, I felt something bloom inside my chest that wasn't grief, it was possibility, and it terrified me. And I wanted it anyway. When I walked back into the house, the silence felt different. Not heavy. Not hollow, just waiting. I leaned against the closed front door for a moment, pressing my fingertips to my lips as if the warmth of him might still be there. 5 years old. Kissed on my own porch like a teenager. If Marge could see me now, she'd faint right into her lemon squares. I let out a breath that turned into a soft laugh. It startled me, that laugh. It had been so long since joy had slipped out of me without permission. Upstairs, the mirrored wardrobe caught the afternoon light. I stood in front of it again, the woman in the reflection looking slightly dazed. You've lost your mind, I told her. She looked back at me, eyes brighter than they'd been in years. Maybe. Or maybe she had finally found it again. The phone rang downstairs and nearly sent my heart through my ribs. I froze. Who calls on a Saturday afternoon? By the third ring, I forced myself to move. Hamlam? Sarah, how are you? She asked. Did the wardrobe turn out okay? I swallowed carefully. It's beautiful. Slides perfectly. See, I told you yours would open up the room. They do. There was a pause. You sound different, she said. I turned toward the window, watching a leaf drift across the yard. Different how? Lighter. I hesitated. Might just be the weather. Mem. She replied, in that tone daughters use when they're not convinced. Mom, you're okay, right? The question wasn't about furniture. It was about years. I'm okay, I said softly. And for the first time in a long while it wasn't a half-truth. After we hung up, I went upstairs and opened the wardrobe again. I hung my clothes inside carefully, smoothing each sleeve, adjusting each hanger. I left a little space on the right side. I don't know why, old habits, or new possibilities. The week that followed felt charged. Jake texted. The first message made me stare at my phone for a full minute before responding. Jakey made it home without crashing. That porch kiss might have distracted me. I shouldn't have smiled as wide as I did. Me careful. I don't need a lawsuit from your mother. Jake, she'd probably just ask for details. I laughed out loud. That laugh again. We texted every day after that. Nothing inappropriate. Nothing rushed, just conversations. He sent me a photo of the dinner he made for his mom. I sent him a picture of the tomatoes I'd grown in my garden. He asked about my students from years ago. I told him about the boy who hated Shakespeare, until I made him act out Hamlet's madness on a desk. He told me about learning to drive in his dad's old truck, somewhere between Good morning. And sleep well. Something steady began forming. Friday evening, he came over for dinner. I nearly cancelled 3 times that afternoon. What was I thinking? Inviting a man into my home. Into the space where David had lived and loved and died. But when Jake knocked on the door holding a modest bouquet of white daisies, all my panic quieted. For the house, he said. They're lovely. I replied. And for you. He added softly. Dinner was simple. Roast chicken. Mashed potatoes, green beans. He complimented everything like it was the finest meal he'd ever had. You're easy to impress. I teased. No, he said. I just appreciate effort. After we ate, we sat in the living room. The same room where I had spent countless evenings alone with the television humming softly. Now the space felt fuller. Warmer. He noticed the framed photo of David on the mantel. That's him, he said gently. He looks kind. He was. Jake didn't look threatened. He didn't look uncomfortable. He walked closer to the photo and studied it respectfully. Thank you, he murmured quietly. For what? I asked. For loving her well. My throat tightened. That simple gesture, that acknowledgement, dissolved a fear I hadn't realized I was carrying. This wasn't competition. This wasn't replacement. This was continuation. Later, when he stood to leave, the air shifted again. We stood near the door, close but not touching. I don't want to rush you, he said carefully. I know. I just want to be here. However that looks. I stepped forward then. My choice, my movement. I reached up, placing my hands lightly against his chest. His heart was steady under my palms. I don't know the rules, I admitted. There aren't any, he replied. There are always rules. Then we'll break the right ones. I laughed softly. He leaned down and kissed me again. Longer this time. Deeper. His hands rested gently at my waist, careful, asking without words. And I answered without pulling away. When he left, I didn't feel guilty. I felt awake. The next Sunday, I made the mistake of telling Marge. We were sitting at our usual table after church, sipping weak coffee from foam cups. I've been seeing someone, I said casually. Seeing someone? I repeated, calmer than I felt. No, Markin, she stared at me. How old? 32. Her mouth opened and closed twice before any sound came out. Bev. I know. Less. She studied me carefully. Is he kind? Yes. Is he using you? No. Are you using him? The question startled me. Marge leaned back slowly. Well, she said finally. 'Bout time. I blinked. That's it. You've been half alive for 7 years. If this man makes you feel whole again, I don't care if he's 22 or 82. I felt tears prick at my eyes. You're not scandalized. Oh, I am, she said. But I'll manage. We both laughed. The real storm came 2 weeks later when Sarah dropped by unexpectedly. Jake's truck was in the driveway, of course it was. I had just poured him a glass of iced tea when the doorbell rang. My stomach dropped. Jake glanced at me. Want me to hide in the closet? He joked softly. Don't you dare. I opened the door. Mom, I was in the neighborhood and thought. Sarah stopped mid-sentence. Her eyes shifted past me. She saw him. Everything in her posture changed. He. Jake said politely, stepping forward but not too close. Sarah, this is Jake, I said evenly. The furniture guy? She asked flatly. He has a name, I replied. The silence that followed could have cracked glass. I'll give you 2 a minute, Jake said gently. I'll be in the kitchen. Smart man. Sarah stepped inside, lowering her voice immediately. I know. How long? A few weeks. She stared at me as if I'd announced I was moving to another country. He's my age, she said. He's 32. That's not better. I folded my arms. He's kind. He respects me. He doesn't treat me like I'm fragile. That's not the point. What is the point, Sarah? She hesitated. You're vulnerable. I'm not broken. That's not what I mean. It feels like what you mean. Her eyes softened slightly. I just don't want you getting hurt. Sweetheart, I said gently. I've survived burying the love of my life. I can survive heartbreak. She looked at me then, really looked. And maybe for the first time, She saw something she hadn't in years. Strength, not sadness, not fragilis. He make happy, she asked quietly. Yes. Are you sure? Yes, she exhaled slowly. Then I'll try. It wasn't approval. But it was a door left open. When Jake re-entered the room, Sarah studied him carefully. He met her gaze without arrogance. Nice to officially meet you, he said. Officially, she asked. We've heard about each other. Her eyebrow lifted slightly. Oh. Your mom speaks highly of you. A small crack appeared in her armor. She does. All the time. That wasn't entirely true. But it wasn't entirely false either. Over the next hour something shifted, not fully, not comfortably, but enough. After Sarah left, I sank onto the couch. Well, I muttered. Jake sat beside me, not too close. You okay? I feel like I just defended a thesis. He laughed softly. You did great. I turned toward him. Are you sure this isn't too complicated? He didn't hesitate. Not even a little. He shook his head. Life's complicated. This feels simple. I searched his face for doubt. I found none. Instead, I found steadiness, and for the first time in a long while, I allowed myself to lean into it. At 65, I had expected my life to wind down. Instead, it was unfolding again. Messy, unexpected, scandalous to some, but undeniably alive, and this time, I wasn't watching from the sidelines. I was in it. Fully. Heart pounding. Hands open. It wasn't the whispers that hurt. It was the way they stopped when I walked into a room. Church had always been a place of comfort. Familiar hymns. Familiar faces. Familiar casseroles at potlucks. But 3 Sundays after Sarah met Jake, I felt the air shift the moment I stepped inside. Marge squeezed my hand as we slid into our usual pew. Hold your chin up, she murmured. I whispered back, but I could feel it. The glances. The curiosity. Patterson leaned across the aisle before service started. I hear you've made a new friend, she said, stretching the word thin. Yes. I replied evenly. How modern. I smiled politely. I've always tried to stay current. Marge nearly snorted. The truth was, I hadn't brought Jake to church. Not yet. I wasn't sure I was ready for that collision of worlds. But somehow, news traveled faster than a hymn announcement. After the service, as I stood near the exit, Pastor Allen approached me. He wasn't stern. Just thoughtful. Beverly. He said warmly. I've heard you've been spending time with someone. I met his eyes directly. I have. He nodded slowly. Are you happy? The question surprised me. Yes, I said. Then I'll pray for wisdom and peace for both of you. No lecture. No warning. Just that. I hadn't realized how tightly I'd been bracing myself until my shoulders relaxed. That afternoon, Jake came over again. He noticed the shift in me immediately. What happened? He asked gently. Nothing dramatic, I replied. Just the town council of concerned women holding court in the fellowship hall. He smiled faintly. I'm sorry. Don't be, I've survived tougher rooms than that. He studied me for a moment. You don't have to fight everyone alone. I know. But old habits die hard. We sat on the back porch, autumn settling deeper into the air. Leaves scattered across the yard like confetti. After a parade no one noticed. Do you ever regret it? I asked suddenly. Regret what? Choosing this. Me. He didn't answer immediately. Instead he leaned back in the chair, considering. I think about the complications. He admitted. The looks. The conversation, the assumptions. And none of that outweighs how I feel when I'm with you. My chest tightened. Jakey. He leaned forward, resting his forearms on his knees. When I'm with women my age, sometimes it feels like we're all performing, trying to impress, trying to keep up. With you, there's no performance, you're steady, you know who you are. I laughed softly. That's generous. It's true. I looked down at my hands, at the faint lines crossing my skin. I don't always feel steady, I admitted. Sometimes I feel like I'm balancing on a line I didn't mean to step onto. Then I'll walk it with you, he said simply. The ease of that promise nearly undid me. Weeks turned into months. We developed a rhythm. He came for dinner twice a week. I visited his place once, meeting his mother properly. I had been terrified of that meeting. What would she think? That I was robbing her son of his youth. That I was some lonely widow clinging to attention. Instead, she greeted me with warm eyes and firm hugs. "So you're Beverly," she said, studying me carefully. "Yes, ma'am." "Oh, none of that," she waved off. "Call me Linda." We sat at her kitchen table while she poured tea. "He talks about you." She groaned softly. "Mum, I'm just stating facts." I felt my cheeks warm. Linda looked at me, not unkindly. "I worried," she admitted. "At first." "That's fair," I said gently. "But then I saw his face when he came home after your first coffee. I haven't seen him look that settled in years." Settled. That word lodged itself somewhere deep. "I don't want to take him away from anything," I said carefully. "You're not taking," she replied. "You're adding." Later, as Jake drove me home, I sat quietly beside him. He said. "She's protective. She loves me, and I respect that." He reached over, lacing his fingers through mine. "She sees what I see." "What's that?" I asked softly. "That you're not done living." The leaves fell completely by November. The air sharpened. One evening, as we sat by the fireplace, Jake grew quieter than usual. "What is it?" I asked. He hesitated. "I got offered a promotion." "That's wonderful," I said immediately. My stomach dipped. "Seattle, 2 hours away. Full-time management position," he continued. "Better pay, more stability." "That's good." He studied my face. "You don't sound convinced." "I am," I insisted. "It's a good opportunity." "But..." I looked into the fire, watching flames twist and shift. "But I just started feeling like my life wasn't shrinking." He moved closer. "I haven't accepted it." "Why not?" "Because I don't want to build something to you and then leave." The words settled heavy between us. "You can't turn down your future for me," I said quietly. "You are part of my future." The certainty in his voice made my throat tighten. "I won't ask you to choose," I added. "You're not asking." Silence stretched. "What if," he said slowly, "we don't treat distance like an ending?" I looked at him. "What if we treat it like a test?" "Off what?" "Off whether this is just unexpected or meant." The word meant scared me. Not because it was foolish. Because it was powerful. "I'm not afraid of distance," I said finally. "I'm afraid of disappearing again." "You won't," he said firmly. "How can you be sure?" "Because I see you." There it was again. That steady gaze. That grounding presence. "Take the promotion, I say." He searched my face. "Are you sure?" "Yes. Even if it's hard. I've survived harder." A slow exhale left him. "I don't want to lose this." "You won't," I replied. "Unless you stop choosing it." He leaned in and kissed me slowly, deliberately. A promise. Not an ending. December came wrapped in lights and cold air. He accepted the job. We celebrated quietly at my house, stringing white lights across the porch like we were sealing something sacred. "You're brave," he said at one point. "So are you." Christmas felt different that year. Not because of presents. Because of presents. My grandchildren came over, filling the house with noise and chaos. Jake joined us later in the afternoon, tentative but smiling. I watched him kneel on the living room floor, helping Tyler assemble a complicated toy car. Jason, 16 and skeptical, studied him closely. "Why are you here?" Jason asked bluntly. "Because I care about your grandma," Jake replied calmly. Jason glanced at me. "Do you?" "Yes," I said firmly. He nodded once, then went back to his phone. It wasn't approval. But it wasn't rejection either. That night, after everyone left and the house quieted again, Jake stood near the door. "I leave next week," he said softly. "I know. I don't want this to fade." "It won't," I replied, though fear flickered inside me. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out something small. "A key to my place," he said. "In case you ever decide Seattle isn't so far." My breath caught. "I'm not asking you to," mooted quickly. "Just don't close the door." I closed my fingers around the key. And for the first time in years, I wasn't holding on to the past. I was holding on to possibility. At 65, I had screamed because something unexpected went in fast and knocked the air from my lungs. But what stayed was gentler. Slower. Built shelf by shelf. conversation by conversation, choice by choice. And as the year came to a close, I stood in front of the mirrored wardrobe once more. I didn't see a widow frozen in time. I saw a woman in motion. Still loving, still risking, still alive, and this time I wasn't afraid of what might come next. The morning he left. The sky was pale and undecided, hovering between rain and light. I stood on my porch wrapped in a wool coat I hadn't worn in years. He loaded the last of his boxes into the back of his truck. Movements slower than usual, like if he took his time, long enough the day might stretch and refuse to end. 2 hours, he said, closing the tailgate. That's all. 2 hours can feel like a different world. He walked up the steps and stopped in front of me. You don't have to be brave every second, he murmured. I'm not trying to be brave, I said. I'm trying to be steady. He touched my cheek, and I leaned into his palm before I could think better of it. We'll call tonight, he said. And this weekend, I'll come back. You should settle in first. I'll settle faster knowing I'm coming back. I smiled, though my chest ached. When he finally climbed into the truck, I didn't wave dramatically. I didn't cry openly. I stood there with both hands in my coat pockets and watched until the truck disappeared at the end of the street. Then I went inside. The house felt larger. Not emptier. Just larger. Like space had expanded around me. I walked into the bedroom and opened the wardrobe he built. The hinges moved smoothly. The scent of cedar still lingered faintly. Inside, my clothes hung neatly. Ordered intentional. I ran my finger to shelf he had installed for my old photo albums. I pulled one down. Frank's face smiled up at me from a beach trip decades ago. His arm around my waist, my hair darker, my body younger, my eyes full of the same softness. I'm not replacing you, I whispered. The guilt had visited me in quiet waves these past months. Was it betrayal to feel alive again? Was it disloyal to laugh with another man? But love didn't feel like subtraction. It felt like expansion. That night Jake called just as he promised. You should see this place, he said. There's a window that looks out over the water. I'm glad you have a view. I wish you were standing next to me in it. I sat at my kitchen table, phone pressed close. What did you eat? I asked. He laughed softly. You always ask practical questions when you're emotional. Someone has to keep us grounded. I had takeout. It was terrible. Good. You'll appreciate my cooking more. He grew quiet. I already do. We talked for an hour. Nothing dramatic, just details. The shape of his new office. The sound of traffic near his building. The way the apartment echoed because there wasn't much furniture yet. When we hung up, the silence returned, but it wasn't as sharp. It felt shared. The first week was manageable. The second was harder. I caught myself turning toward the porch on Thursday evening, expecting to see him walking up the steps. I set 2 plates on the table without thinking. Old habits forming too quickly. I corrected myself gently. This is what choosing looks like. Saturday afternoon, his truck pulled into my driveway again. My heart leapt so unexpectedly I had to sit down. He barely made it to the door before I opened it. You're here, I said unnecessarily. I told you I would be. He stepped inside and wrapped his arms around me. The hug was tighter than usual. Longer. I missed you, he admitted against my hair. I missed you too. The weekend passed in a soft blur. We cooked. We walked through town. We endured a few stares and one openly curious question from a woman at the bakery. Is this your son? She asked brightly. Jake didn't flinch. No, I said calmly. He's not. The woman blinked, embarrassed. Jake squeezed my hand as we left. You handled that well. I've had practice with assumptions. That night, as we lay side by side, the distance felt temporary. But when Sunday evening came and he packed his bag again, the weight returned. This is the part I hate, he said. I won't always feel like this. How do you know? Because we won't always be at the beginning. He studied me. What does that mean? It means beginnings are fragile. They wobble, they test themselves. And later, things either root or they don't. And us. I met his eyes. We're still planting. Winter settled in fully after that, Snow lined the sidewalks. My garden slept under frost. The phone calls continued. Sometimes we talked for hours. Sometimes we were both too tired and simply said goodnight with promises for tomorrow. There were small misunderstandings. One night, he canceled his visit because of a work emergency. I understood logically. But emotionally, I felt something close. A familiar tightening, the fear of becoming secondary. "You're upset," he said gently over the phone. "I'm not upset. You're quieter. I just rearranged my weekend in my head." "I know." Silence stretched. He urged. "I don't want to become something you fit in around everything else. Then don't treat me like I am." The words slipped out sharper than I intended. He didn't respond defensively. "You're right," he said after a moment. "I should have told you sooner. I should have made it clear you were my priority." The steadiness in his tone softened me. "I'm still learning this too," I admitted. "Me too." Distance didn't break us, but it revealed us. My insecurities, his stubborn independence, our shared need to feel chosen. In February, he surprised me. "I have a long weekend," he said. "Pack a bag." "For what?" "For Seattle." I froze. "Jakey?" "Just come see it, no pressure, no expectations." The idea terrified me more than I wanted to admit. Leaving my house, my town, my routines. At 65, the world outside familiar streets felt larger than it used to. But hadn't I promised myself I wouldn't shrink again? So I packed. The drive felt longer than 2 hours. When we reached his apartment building, my palms were damp. Inside, the space was modern, open, bright. He watched me carefully as I stepped toward the window. Water stretched beyond the glass, gray and endless. "It's beautiful," I whispered. "Stay," he said softly behind me. I turned. "Just for the weekend," he added quickly. "I smile for the weekend." We explored the city slowly. Coffee shops, bookstores, a quiet pier where gulls cried overhead. No one stared, no one whispered. We were simply two people walking side by side. That anonymity felt strange. Freeing. That night, as we sat on his couch, he took my hand. "I don't want to live two separate lives," he said. "You're not. It feels like I am." I understood. He was building something there. We were building something here. "I'm not asking you to move," he continued. "Not now. Not suddenly. But I want you in this part of my world too." I looked around the apartment. It didn't feel threatening. It felt like possibility again. "I don't know what that looks like yet," I said honestly. "We'll figure it out." On Sunday evening, as we drove back toward my town, I felt different. Not torn, expanded. My life no longer fit into one zip code. Spring began its slow return. Green shoots pushed through thawing soil. I found myself planning trips north. He found himself extending weekends south. And somewhere between porch lights and city skylines, something steadier took root. One evening in April, as we sat on my back steps watching the sunset, he spoke quietly. "I love you." The words landed gently. Not explosive, not dramatic, just certain. I didn't panic and look away. "I love you too," I said. And this time, there was no guilt, no fear of betrayal, only truth. At 65, I didn't expect a furniture delivery to change my life. But it didn't just bring a wardrobe. It brought motion, challenged tenderness, distance, choice, and a love that wasn't about filling emptiness. It was about expanding a life I had almost convinced myself was finished growing. And I wasn't finished. Not yet. Saying, "I love you," did not make everything easier. If anything, it made everything more real. Love wasn't just warmth on the porch or laughter over burnt garlic bread anymore. It was decisions, logistics, future spoken out loud. In May, Sarah came by unexpectedly. She stood in my kitchen with her arms folded, studying me the way she used to when I was trying to determine if I was hiding something. "You look different," she said. "Different how?" "Lighter." I smiled faintly. "I've been told that." She leaned against the counter. "Are you happy?" "Less." "And you're sure this isn't loneliness dressed up as excitement?" Her question didn't sting, it came from concern, not judgment. "I know what loneliness feels like," I said softly. "This isn't it." She nodded slowly. "Does he still come down every weekend?" "Most." And you go up there too. She exhaled. I just don't want you rearranging your entire life. For someone who might wake up one day and decide he wants children and soccer practice and a house full of noise. I stepped closer to her. He doesn't want children. He says that now. He's had years to think about it. She searched my face. And what do you want? The answer surprised me with its clarity. I want partnership. Not caretaken. Partnership. Her expression softened. Dad was that for you. Les. And this is different. Less. She hesitated. But not less. No, I said gently, not less. That seemed to settle something in her. In June, Jake brought up something that had clearly been weighing on him. We were sitting at my dining table, paperwork spread between us, his lease renewal notice, my property tax statement. What if? He began carefully. We stopped pretending this is temporary. I looked up. I'm not pretending. I mean the distance. I leaned back in my chair. Are you asking me to move? I'm asking if we can talk about options. Such as. He took a breath. I could look for something closer. Maybe not here, but closer than Seattle. And your promotion. It would mean stepping back. That's not small. I know. Silence stretched. And what would I be giving up? I asked quietly. Your house. Your routines. My independence. You wouldn't lose that. Jakey, I've spent years rebuilding a life that stands on its own. I can't dismantle it overnight. I'm not asking you to. Then what are you asking? He reached across the table, taking my hand. I'm asking if you see a future where we share one address. The question lingered between us like something fragile. I closed my eyes briefly. I do. I admitted. His fingers tightened slightly. But not because I'm afraid of losing you, I continued. And not because I'm trying to chase something before it disappears. Then why? Because I choose it. He nodded. That's all I want. We didn't decide that night. But the conversation changed something. It shifted us from weekend lovers to long-term planners. July arrived warm and restless. My garden bloomed wildly. Roses climbing higher than expected. One evening, as we watered them together, Jake looked at the house thoughtfully. This place holds your whole history, he said. It does. Do you ever feel anchored by it? Sometimes. And sometimes I feel protected by it. He nodded. What if we didn't sell it? What? What, if you kept it, we split time? Or rent it, or just leave it standing? The idea had never occurred to me. I had framed the future as either or, stay or leave, but maybe it wasn't that rigid. You'd be willing to live partlier? I asked. Yes. And commute? Yes. That's a lot. So is love. I laughed softly. You say that like it's a slogan. In August, something unexpected happened. Frank visited me in a dream. He stood in the backyard near the old oak tree. You look happy, he said. I woke with tears on my cheeks. Not from sadness. From permission. That morning, I called Jake. I'm ready to talk about living together. I said. There was a pause. Okay, he replied carefully. But slowly. I added. Deliberately. Always. We began with small steps. He left more clothes at my house. I kept a drawer at his apartment. We tried 2 full weeks together in Seattle. Then 2 full weeks at my place. There were adjustments. He liked the thermostat lower. I woke earlier. He worked late some nights. And I had to learn not to interpret that as withdrawal. One evening, after a minor disagreement about nothing particularly important, I found myself standing alone in the bedroom. Fear crept in quietly. This is the part where it fades. This is where age differences start to matter. This is where reality intrudes. But when I walked back into the living room, he looked immediately. Come here. He said. I sat beside him. What story are you telling yourself? He asked gently. That I'm temporary. He frowned. You're not. How can you be sure? Because I don't build temporary things. His words pulled me back to that first day. The wardrobe. Measured. Leveled. I'm scared sometimes, I admitted. What? That one day you'll want someone who fits more easily into your world. He shook his head slowly. You don't see it, do you? See what? You are my world. The simplicity of it broke something open in me. Not dependency, not desperation, just trust. In September, we signed a lease together. Not in Seattle, not in my town, but halfway between. A small house with light pouring through wide windows and a yard just large enough for roses. We didn't sell my home. We didn't abandon his city apartment immediately. We built something new instead. The day we moved in, I stood in the empty living room and laughed. At 65, I said, most people are downsizing. He wrapped his arms around me from behind. Maybe we're expanding differently. I looked around. The walls were blank. The floors unmarked. No history yet. Just possibility. We'll need furniture, he teased. I know someone good with tools. I replied. He kissed my temple. This time, when something unexpected entered my life fast and knocked the air from my lungs. I didn't scream, I breathed. Because it wasn't chaos anymore. It was choice. And at 65, I didn't expect a furniture delivery to change my life. But it did. Not because of passion alone. Not because of loneliness. But because I opened the door. And when love stepped in, I didn't send it away. The first night in the new house felt unfamiliar in the quietest way. Not empty, not lonely. Just unclaimed. Boxes lined the hallway. The kitchen held mismatched plates from both our old cupboards. The mattress lay directly on the floor, because the bed frame hadn't arrived yet. We're starting from scratch, I said, standing in the middle of the living room. Not from scratch. Jake corrected gently. From experience. I liked that better. We ate takeout sitting cross-legged on the hardwood floor. No television. No pictures on the walls yet. Just us and the hum of a place waiting to be lived in. Are you scared? He asked. A little. Of what? That this feels big. He nodded slowly. It is. I haven't shared a space like this in a long time. I know. You leave cabinets open, I added. He laughed. And you reorganize everything. Because there's a system. I'm learning the system. His smile softened. This is what building looks like. Later that night, as we lay side by side in the dim light, I stared at the ceiling. Frank and I painted our first house together, I said quietly. Jake turned toward me, not tense, just attentive. What color? Soft yellow. We argued about it for days. He smiled faintly. Did he win? We compromised. He brushed a strand of hair away from my face. You're allowed to carry those memories, he said. I know. And you're allowed to make new ones. That was the part I was still learning. The following weeks were filled with small negotiations. Where the couch should go. How much closet space was fair. What time counted as too late for loud music. Nothing dramatic. Just the friction of two established adults choosing to overlap. One evening, I found him in the garage measuring wood. You're not building another wardrobe, are you? I teased. Not unless you scream again, he shot back. I laughed, the sound echoing lightly in the unfinished space. I was startled. You were dramatic. I was alive. He paused, looking at me carefully. You still are. That settled somewhere warm in my chest. Living together revealed habits that distance had softened. He needed solitude sometimes, retreating into silence after long workdays. I had once interpreted silence as rejection. Now I forced myself to wait. Do you need space or are you upset? I asked one evening. Space. He replied immediately. Not from you. Just from everything. Okay. Naming it took away its power. In October we hosted our first dinner in the new house. Sarah and the grandchildren came. So did Linda. The rooms filled with voices, plates clinking, laughter spilling into corners that had felt too still just weeks before. At one point, I stood in the kitchen doorway watching Jake help Tyler set the table. Jason asked him about work. Linda and Sarah compared recipes, and I realized something quietly profound. This wasn't a disruption. It was an addition. Later, as we washed dishes together, Sarah nudged me. She said. Do I? Wes. That's good. It is. Jake caught my eye across the sink, water running over his hands. And I felt it again. Not fireworks. Not urgency. Stability. In November, the first real challenge arrived. His company offered him another advancement, one that would require travel. Frequent. Extended travel. He sat at the kitchen table, the letter folded neatly in front of him. I don't want to decide without you, he said. I studied the paper. How much travel? 2 weeks out of every month. I inhaled slowly. We just moved in together, I know. And now you'd be gone half the time. I would. Silence lingered. Do you want it? I asked. He didn't answer immediately. I want growth, he said carefully. But I don't want to grow away from us. I appreciated the honesty. At 25, ambition might have outranked everything. At 65, priorities rearranged themselves differently. What does taking it give you? I asked. Sphere influence. More income. And what does it cost? Presence. Yes. He leaned forward. I'm not chasing something to prove myself, he said. I've already proven enough. I just don't want to stop evolving. His words echoed my own fears from a year ago. Not being done. Not shrinking. I don't want you smaller, I said softly. And I don't want you lonely. I won't be lonely, I replied. But I will notice your absence. Then maybe the question isn't whether I can take it, he said. Maybe it's whether we can design around it. Design around it. Like furniture in a room. Adjust the light. Make it fit. We've already built something once, I said. We can adjust. Are you sure? I don't want to hold you in place out of fear. He reached for my hand. And I don't want to outrun us. After days of talking, walking, recalibrating, he accepted the position with limits. Fewer travel weeks than initially requested. Boundaries negotiated. Watching him advocate for balance stirred something deep in me. This wasn't a young man chasing endless horizons. This was a partner choosing sustainability. The first time he left for a 2-week stretch, the house felt different. Not hollow, just quieter. But instead of shrinking into it, I expanded into it. I joined a book club. I started volunteering at the community center. I planted winter herbs in the small backyard garden. When he returned, tired but smiling, I met him at the door. You're glowing, he said. So are you. Distance, when chosen consciously, felt different than distance imposed. We were not drifting, we were orbiting. Returning. In December, nearly 2 years after that first furniture delivery, snow dusted the yard outside our shared home. We decorated a tree together. No rush. No spectacle. Just steady warmth. At one point, he handed me a small wrapped box. This isn't dramatic, he said. Just intentional. I opened it slowly. Inside was a simple gold band. Not ornate. Not flashy. Just solid. I'm not asking to replace anything, he said quietly. And I'm not trying to rewrite your past. My breath caught. But I want to mark our present. I looked at the ring. At him. At the life we had constructed plank by plank. You're not afraid, I asked softly. Of what? Of tying yourself to someone who's already lived so much life. He smiled gently. That's exactly why I'm not afraid. Tears blurred my vision. Yes, I whispered. Not because I needed security. Not because I feared losing him. But because I wanted to stand beside him fully. At 65. I didn't expect a furniture delivery to change my life. But it didn't just bring love, it brought prioritization, compromise, expansion. And now, as snow fell softly outside the windows of a house neither of us had imagined 2 years ago, I understood something clearly. Life doesn't end quietly at a certain age. It waits. For a knock at the door. For a hinge to swing open. For a woman to decide she is still willing to be surprised, and when she does, everything can change. Even at 65. Especially at 65. The second winter together came quieter than the first. Not because anything was wrong. But because comfort has its own kind of silence. Our house had become lived in a way that felt natural now. Photos lined the hallway wall. My grandchildren growing taller. Jake and I standing awkwardly close on a hiking trail. Linda baking pies in our kitchen, like she had always belonged there. I found myself waking earlier than Jake most mornings. The house was still cold then, holding the night in its corners. I would make coffee first. Strong. Dark. The way he liked it. Then I would sit by the window and watch the street slowly wake. Sometimes he would come behind me, still half asleep, resting his chin on my shoulder, thinking. He would ask, Just existing. That's dangerous, he'd say softly. Why? Because you might fall in love with the quiet. I had. But not in the way I feared. I loved the quiet because it no longer meant loneliness, it meant peace. In January, I turned 66. I had told everyone I didn't want a party. Sarah ignored me. Marge organized it. Jake pretended innocence. The house filled with people anyway. There were balloons in soft colors. Not loud, not childish, just celebration colors. My grandchildren sang badly but enthusiastically. Tyler tried to blow out the candles before I did. Jake held him back gently. Let Grandma do it, he said. I closed my eyes for a moment before blowing out the candles. Not because I was making a wish, but because I was thanking the life I had. When I opened my eyes again, Jake was watching me. Not smiling, just watching. Later that evening, after everyone left, he handed me a small envelope. What's this? I asked. Open it. Inside was a handwritten letter. I read it slowly. Bev. I spent a long time thinking about what to give you for your birthday. You don't like things that are unnecessary. You don't like gifts that sit unused. So I am giving you this instead. I promise to keep choosing us. Not perfectly. Not always consistently. I promise to listen before reacting. To measure twice before cutting once. To build with patience. And I promise that if one day I am unsure, I will talk to you before I decide anything alone. You have shown me that love is not urgency. It is attention. Thank you for teaching me how to grow without fear, Jake. I didn't realize I was crying until he spoke quietly behind me. Happy birthday. I turned around and hugged him tightly. Did you practice writing that? I asked. A little, he admitted. You're very bad at pretending you're casual. He laughed softly. Spring returned again as it always does. One afternoon, I received a call from Michael. Mom, he said. Yes. There was hesitation in his voice. I think I understand now. Understand what? Why you didn't just stay alone. My chest tightened slightly. What made you change your mind? I saw you with Jake at Emma's school play. You did. Yes. You didn't tell me. I was watching you? He admitted. And you laughed more in 2 hours than I remember seeing you laugh in years. Silence stretched. I was afraid you'd forget Dad, he said quietly. I will never forget your father, I replied. A love doesn't have to be exclusive across time. He didn't respond immediately. Finally, he said, I'm glad you're happy, Mom. That was enough. In summer, we took a trip to the coast. I walked barefoot along the sand while he carried our shoes. The ocean wind tangled my hair. You look younger here, he said. I feel younger here. He took my hand. Do you regret anything? He asked suddenly. I thought about it. About loneliness. About fear. About all the years I spent believing my story was finished. No, I said finally. Not even waiting 7 years. I shook my head. Those years mattered. They shaped who I am now. He nodded. I'm grateful I met you when I did. He said quietly. Why? Because you are not trying to become someone else for me. That night, we sat on the balcony of the coastal inn, listening to waves breathing against rock. I want to grow old with you, he said. I smiled gently. You already are. He laughed. You know what I mean. Yes, I said. I do. In autumn of that year, something small but profound happened. I caught myself planning the future without fear. Not just days. Years. Not counting time as something slipping away, but something unfolding. We talked about travel. About visiting my grandchildren when they were older. About maybe volunteering together when he eventually reduced work. About buying comfortable chairs instead of fashionable ones. Life became less about dramatic moments and more about consistent presence. One evening, as we were folding laundry together, he spoke quietly. Do you ever think about dying? The question was not morbid, it was honest. Yes, I said. Are you afraid? Not as much as I used to be. Why? Because I believe I will be loved while I am alive. He didn't say anything for a long time. Then he kissed the top of my head. Winter returned again. Another year had passed. At 67, I stood in the backyard watching snow fall softly onto roses that had stopped blooming months ago. Jake came behind me, wrapping a thick scarf around my neck. Cold? He asked. Little. He stood beside me. We watched the world turn quiet under white light. You know, I said after a while. If that delivery man hadn't knocked on my door. I might have spent the rest of my life believing I was finished growing. He smiled. I think you were waiting, he said. For what? For someone who would build slowly. I leaned my head against his shoulder. Yes, I said. I think I was. At 65, I didn't expect a furniture delivery to change my life. But sometimes life doesn't announce its turning points with thunder. Sometimes it knocks politely, wipes its boots on the mat, and asks if it can come in. And if you open the door, everything you thought was ending might just be beginning. The years began to move quietly after that. Not fast, not slow. Just steady like breathing. By the time I was 68, I stopped counting weekends the way I used to. Instead, I counted moments. The way Jake made coffee too strong for anyone else but perfect for me. The way he still reached for my hand when we crossed the street, even though I was perfectly capable of walking alone. The way he checked the locks at night without saying anything, as if protecting sleep itself. One spring morning, I woke before him again. The house was quiet except for the refrigerator humming softly. I walked into the kitchen barefoot, and opened the window above the sink. The air smelled like soil waking up. Birds were loud outside. Alive. I made coffee, strong dark. 2 mugs. He came downstairs 15 minutes later, hair messy from sleep. Eyes soft and unfocused. You didn't wake me, he said. You look tired. He stood behind me while I poured coffee, resting his forehead briefly against the back of my shoulder. You spoil me, he murmured. I am 68 years old, I said. I have earned the right to spoil someone occasionally. He laughed quietly. We sat at the table without speaking for a while. Comfortable silence was now our language. Then he spoke. I've been thinking about retirement. I turned slightly. Early? Maybe, not I planned. Why? He traced the rim of his mug with his finger. I don't want to miss the ordinary parts of our life. The word struck me unexpectedly. Ordinary parts. Not vacations. Not milestones. Not dramatic declarations. The mornings, the grocery trips, the laundry folding, the slow walk to nowhere. I like that, I said softly. In summer of that year, we adopted a dog. A stubborn, aging golden retriever named Milo who had been surrendered twice already. The shelter worker said, he likes quiet homes. Jake looked at me, I looked at Jake. Milo came home with us. He followed me around the house the first week, as if afraid I might disappear. Jake joked that I had competition now. I told him I welcomed it. Milo slept at the foot of our bed. Sometimes at night, I would feel Jake's hand reach across darkness to find mine, fingers interlacing automatically, like muscle memory of love. I realized something then. Love wasn't excitement every day. It was knowing someone was still reaching for you in the dark. When I turned 70, my grandchildren were teenagers and taller than me. They teased me about Jake constantly. Grandma has a boyfriend, Emma said dramatically at dinner one night. I have a partner, I corrected. Same thing, Tyler said. No, I replied, not always. After dinner, Jason approached me quietly. Grandma? Are you happy? The question had become easier to answer over the years. I said. Good, he replied. He paused. Because Dad says people should not stay somewhere they are only half happy. Michael had said that. I smiled. He's a wise man, I said. In autumn of my 70th year, Jake and I took a long road trip south. No schedule, no reservations in advance. Just driving. Music played softly in the truck. Sometimes we talked. Sometimes we didn't. On one lonely stretch of highway, he said, do you remember the first day I came to your house? Yes. I was pretending not to be. He smiled. I was nervous too. Why? Because I thought you might see me as temporary. I turned toward him slightly. No. What did you see? You looked at me like I was something you were allowed to want. The truth of that statement made my eyes sting. At a small motel near a desert town, we sat outside watching stars appear slowly, The sky there was enormous. I used to think aging meant shrinking, I said, and now I think aging means choosing more carefully what you grow into. He took my hand. I love you more quietly now, he said. I replied. The kind of love we had was no longer loud. It was durable. Like the wardrobe he bought all those years ago. Measured, aligned, sliding smoothly because every track had been installed with patience. At 72, my hair was almost completely silver. I stopped wearing makeup most days. Not because I stopped caring, but because I felt no need to hide time. One evening, sitting on the porch, I asked him a question I had avoided for years. If I die first, what will you do? He didn't react dramatically. He thought for a long time. Grieve, he said finally. Then I will keep living. Not because I want to move on, but because that is what you would want. I nodded slowly. If I die first, he added, I will hope you do the same. I squeezed his hand. In winter, Milo slept closer to us when snow fell. His breathing joined ours. 3 lives in one quiet house. One night as I lay beside Jake in the dark, I spoke softly. I was afraid of love after David died. I know. But I'm not afraid anymore. Why? Because I learned that loving again doesn't take anything away from what came before. He kissed my hand gently. Outside, snow fell silently. Time moved forward. Not violently, not suddenly, just like breathing. At 75, I stood in the same yard where roses once grew. Jake walked behind me slowly now. Not because he was weak, just because we matched each other's pace. Are you tired? He asked. I admitted. He rested his chin gently on my shoulder like he had done years ago. May 2, we watched the sky together. I thought about that day. The doorbell. The wardrobe boxes. The young man with respectful eyes and strong hands. Life had walked into my house politely, wiped its boots on my mat, and asked if it could stay. And I had said yes. The winter I turned 70, 8 was quieter than all the winters before it. Not because life had lost color, but because noise had softened. Milo had passed the year before. The house felt different without the slow thump against wooden floors. Jake buried him under the old oak tree in the backyard. He didn't speak much that day. Neither did I. Some griefs don't need words. They just need presence. That evening we sat on the porch wrapped in thick blankets. You're thinking about him, Jake said. Yes. He was a good dog. Silence settled between us. Then he added quietly, you were a good mother to him. That made me cry. Not loudly, just quietly, the kind of crying that feels more like breathing pain out than expressing it. Time had changed how I cried. Earlier in life, tears were storms. Now they were rain. In spring of that year I noticed Jake moving slower in the mornings. Not dramatically, just slightly. Subtle things. The way he paused a moment longer when standing up. The way he stretched his shoulders before working in the garden. I didn't ask immediately. I waited. Because I had learned patience was sometimes love in disguise. One afternoon, I found him sitting alone in the garage, holding a small medical report. My stomach tightened. Jakey, I said softly. He didn't look surprised. He was never good at hiding things from me. I went to the doctor, he said. Why didn't you tell me? I wanted answers first. I walked closer and sat beside him on the old workbench. What did they say? He exhaled slowly. Early stage heart irregularity. Nothing immediately dangerous. But they want monitoring. Fear rose quietly inside my chest. Not panic, not hysteria, but the cold, slow realization that time touches everyone eventually. Are you scared? I asked. Why didn't you tell me earlier? He looked at his hands. Because I didn't want you to worry before I knew how serious it was. I reached over and took his hand. I am your partner, I said gently. Worry is part of the contract. That made him smile faintly. We'll go to appointments together, I continued. Yes, he said. And you won't hide results from me. Spring turned into summer. The doctor visits became routine. The condition was manageable with medication and lifestyle adjustments. But something changed in Jake's eyes after that. Not fear. Not sadness. But awareness. I saw him watch me sometimes as if memorizing small things. The way sunlight touched my hair. The way I folded towels. The way I hummed when cooking. One night I asked him directly, "Are you preparing to leave me?" The question was blunt. He didn't react defensively. He thought for a long moment. "No," he said. "But you are thinking about mortality more," I said. "Yes." "Why?" "Because I love you." The simplicity of it was disarming. When you love someone, he continued quietly, you start thinking about how the world will feel without them. I swallowed. I don't like thinking about that. I know. He reached for my hand. I'm not leaving by choice anytime soon. The following year, I turned 80. The house was filled again. Not as loudly as before, but warmly. My grandchildren were adults now. Emma was studying biology. Tyler wanted to work in engineering. Jason was surprisingly quiet and thoughtful, standing beside me on the porch during the party. "You were right," he said suddenly. "About what?" "Love doesn't have to replace anything." I smiled. I learned that late too. That night, after everyone left, Jake and I sat in the living room with only one lamp on. The world felt soft around the edges. "I have something for you," he said. "Oh dear, should I be nervous?" He laughed quietly. "No." He handed me a small leather-bound book. Inside were letters. Some were dated years ago, some were recent. I opened one randomly. "Bev. Today I watched you feed roses in the backyard and realized something. You are becoming the landscape of my life. Not an event, not a chapter, but the ground itself. If I were to lose you, I would not just lose a person. I would lose direction." I closed the book slowly. "Jakey. I started writing them after I moved in," he said. "I didn't know if I would ever give them to you." "Why now?" "Because I want you to know what you have meant to me before time makes it harder to say." Tears blurred my vision. "I love you," I said. "I know." He replied softly. "In my 82nd year, my knees became less reliable. I used a cane sometimes. Not out of necessity every day, but as a precaution." Jake started walking slower beside me. Not because he had to, because he wanted to match my pace. "I don't want you feeling old next to me," I told him one evening. He stopped walking and turned to face me. "You are not my companion because you are young," he said gently. "You are my companion because you are you." Winter came again. Snow fell softly on the roses that had survived every season. One night I woke up feeling unusually tired. Not sick, just heavy. Jake was awake beside me. "Are you okay?" he asked immediately. "Yes," I said, but I wasn't entirely sure. The next morning I told him something quietly. "I think I am nearing the end of my road." The words were not spoken with fear. They were spoken with acceptance. He didn't deny it, he didn't argue. He simply held my hand for a long time. "When?" he asked softly. "I don't know." We sat together by the window watching winter light filter through bare branches. "I am not afraid of dying," I said. "I know. I am afraid of leaving you alone." He squeezed my hand. "I was alone before I met you," he said. "I will survive after you." That was the hardest and kindest thing he could have said. Spring came again. I turned 83. My strength faded slowly but peacefully. One evening, I told him, "I want to die in my own bed." He nodded. "I want the house to be warm," I continued. "I want roses blooming outside if possible. I want you beside me." "Yes," he said quietly. Not dramatic, not emotional, just acceptance. On a quiet April morning, birds were loud outside. Sunlight filled the bedroom. My breathing was slow. Jake sat beside me, holding my hand. "You changed my life," I told him. "You was waiting," I said. "For me?" he asked. "For something worth opening the door for." He kissed my hand. "I am glad I knocked," he said. "I am too." My eyes grew heavier. The world softened. Not ending abruptly, just quietly loosening its hold. I whispered, "Yes. Measure twice." He smiled through tears. "Yes, bet once." "Yes." I closed my eyes. And for the first time in my life, I felt no fear of the future. Because love had not been a moment. It had been a life lived inside another life. And the last thing I felt was his hand still holding mine. The house was very quiet after she left. Not immediately, not violently, just quietly. like a candle burning lower until the flame is almost touching the wax. Jake sat beside the bed long after the doctors and nurses had gone. He didn't cry at first. He held her hand. Her skin was still warm. The roses outside were blooming, exactly as she had wanted. Spring sunlight touched the window like it was trying to be gentle. He spoke softly, even though he knew she couldn't hear him anymore. "You did it, Bev. You opened the door." He stayed there until evening. Then until night. Then until the house felt too large. The grandchildren arrived the next day. Sarah stood at the doorway first. She didn't say anything for a long time. Then she walked past Jake and sat beside her grandmother's bed, taking Bev's other hand. She was stubborn, Sarah said quietly. "Yes," Jake replied. "She loved too much. Less." Michael arrived later, standing silently near the window. Jason and Emma cried softly together in the hallway. Tyler stood beside Jake. "Is Grandma in heaven?" he asked. Jake thought about it. "I think Grandma's where Luz when it is finished being afraid." The boy nodded slowly. The funeral was small. Bev had requested that, only family and close friends, no loud speeches. Marge spoke first. She was a woman who answered the door when life knocked. Marge said. "And she taught us that love does not have an age limit." Jake stood last. He had written something but did not read it. Instead, he spoke from memory. "Beverly taught me that strength is not loud, it is steady. She taught me that patience is not waiting for life. It is choosing life even when you are afraid. She taught me that love is not about finding someone who fits perfectly the first time. It is about building tracks so the doors can slide without resistance." He paused. "I was the furniture delivery man who knocked on her door. But she was the one who opened it." There was quiet crying in the crowd. After the burial, Jake stayed alone near the oak tree behind the house. Milo's grave was there too. Now Bev's rested beside it. He placed a small wooden ring box on the soil. Inside was the gold band he had given her years ago. He didn't bury it. He left it on top of the earth. Because some love is not meant to be hidden. The house remained. Bev had insisted. Sarah helped Jake keep it. He divided his time between Seattle and the house in the small town. The wardrobe in the bedroom stayed exactly where it was. Every year, on the anniversary of the day he first came to assemble it, Jake opened both sliding mirrors and stood in front of them. He would speak quietly. Perfect fit. Sometimes he imagined she was standing beside him in the reflection. Time moved forward. Jake eventually retired early. He volunteered at the community center. He helped young couples fix furniture. And every now and then, an elderly woman would joke men knocking on doors. He would smile. Because he knew. At 85, Jake sat on the porch of the house alone one evening. Snow was falling softly even though it was early winter. The roses were gone now. Dormant underground, waiting, he placed a cup of strong black coffee on the step beside him. "Strong," he said quietly. Many spoke to the empty air. "Measure twice." Silence answered. "Cut once." A wind moved through the oak tree leaves like breathing. He smiled faintly. "You were right, Bev. Life doesn't end quietly. It just waits politely for you to open the door." Inside the house, the mirrored wardrobe doors reflected the empty bedroom. But sometimes, if sunlight entered at the right angle, it looked like a woman with silver hair was standing there, patient and alive, watching the man who once knocked on her door. And if anyone asked Jake if he regretted loving her knowing it would end in loss, he would shake his head. Because love, he had learned, was not measured by duration. It was measured by attention, by patience, by the willingness to build something that could stand even after the builders were gone. On the night before his 92nd birthday, Jake sat on the bed in the bedroom where they had built their life. The house was quiet. The world outside was quiet. He placed Bev's old pearl earrings on the bedside table. He spoke softly into the darkness. "If I meet you again somewhere, I will knock first." He closed his eyes. And somewhere in the long, patient silence of time, a woman who once screamed at a wardrobe delivery smiled, because he had measured twice and cut once. and built love slowly enough that it never collapsed when one of them left. The night was very quiet where Bev was. Not quiet the way the house had been in her last years. This quiet was deeper. Gentler. It felt like standing inside a long breath that had no beginning and no end. She didn't feel her body the way she once had. There was no weight in her knees, no ache in her back, no slow tiredness of aging. Only warmth. And light that was not sunlight. She stood barefoot on something that was not soil and not air. Ahead of her was the oak tree. The same oak tree from the backyard. Its branches were full of leaves even though it had been winter when she died. Under the tree stood a man. He was younger than he had been in his final years. 32, maybe. Dark hair neatly cut, shoulders strong. Eyes kind. He was holding 2 mugs of coffee. Black, he said softly. She laughed. The sound surprised her. It felt like remembering how laughter used to live inside her chest. You came early, she said. Hika was waiting. She walked toward him slowly. Not because she was tired but because this moment deserved patience. When she reached him, he did not rush to touch her. He waited. Like he had always waited. Did you measure twice? She asked. He said. And cut once. Yes, he handed her one of the coffee mugs. She took it. It was warm. Perfectly strong. Did you miss me? He asked quietly. Every day after I left, she said. And before it? Yes, she said. But I did not know it yet. He nodded as if that made perfect sense. They stood together under the eternal oak tree. Time here did not move the way it did below. It was patient. Was it a good life? He asked. She thought for a long time. Yes, she said. Even the fear. Yes. Why? Because love was larger than all of it. Wind moved through the leaves even though was no earth wind here. He reached slowly and touched her hand. His skin was warm. Alive. I was afraid I would be alone when you left, he said. You were never alone, she replied. You were carrying me in your future. He smiled. Did I do well? He asked quietly. She stepped closer. You did more than well. You built slowly. You listened before speaking. You stayed when it would have been easier to leave. She paused. And you loved an old woman who was afraid of being forgotten. He shook his head gently. I loved a woman who opened the door when life knocked. They sat together under the oak tree. There was no urgency, no hunger, only presence. After a long time, he spoke again. Do you remember the wardrobe? Yes. The sliding mirrors. I still measure twice, he said softly. She laughed again. Good. Silence followed. Not empty silence, full silence. The kind that holds meaning without needing words. Finally she spoke. If someone asks what love is, she said. What will you tell them? He thought carefully. Love is paying attention long enough to see another person grow older, and still deciding to stay. She nodded slowly. And you? He asked. What will you tell them? She looked at the endless light around them. I will tell them that love is not about finding someone who removes loneliness. It is about finding someone who makes loneliness honest. He squeezed her hand. Far below them, in a small townhouse with a mirrored wardrobe, an old man sat on a porch beside a cup of cold coffee. The wind moved through oak leaves. And for a brief, impossible moment, if one listened very carefully, it might have sounded like a woman laughing softly under a tree that had watched 2 people learn how to build a life slowly. The wardrobe doors inside the house reflected sunlight. And sometimes, late in the afternoon, people said they thought they saw 2 silhouettes standing side by side in the mirror. Not perfect. Just patient. Just together. Waiting politely for anyone who was brave enough to open the door. Many years passed after that. The town changed. The coffee shop on the corner replaced its wooden chairs with modern metal ones. Young people with tattoos and man-bun haircuts rode bicycles along streets that used to be quiet. Life kept moving forward the way it always does. Inside the old house, the mirrored wardrobe still stood. The sliding doors moved smoothly when opened. Because Jake had maintained them carefully every year. On the anniversary of the day he first assembled it, he would sit in the bedroom and speak quietly. Measure twice. Cut once. Then he would stand in front of the mirrors. He was very old now. 97. His hands were slower, his breathing was softer. But his eyes were still kind. Sarah visited often. She would bring soup and sit beside him while he told stories about her mother. Did she really laugh like that? Sarah asked once. Yes, he said. Like she was remembering something joyful before it happened. Jason brought his children sometimes. They liked listening to Jake talk about their grandmother. Was Grandma beautiful? Emma's daughter asked one day. Jake thought about it. She was not beautiful the way movies show beauty. She was beautiful the way soil is beautiful. The girl didn't understand, so he explained. She made other people grow. In spring of his 98th year, Jake felt his body slowing. Not painfully. Just gently. Like a river reaching the ocean. He asked Sarah to help him walk to the backyard one afternoon. The oak tree was very large now. Older than when Bev had first stood under it. Grandpa Jake. Sarah said softly, you should rest inside. Not yet. He sat on the wooden bench beneath the tree. The wind moved leaves like breathing. He spoke quietly. I think I am close to seeing her again. Sarah didn't argue. She knew better than to fight peace. Are you afraid? She asked. He shook his head slowly. Why? Because I have lived more years loving her than I lived years before I met her. That night, he asked to be placed in the bedroom. The house was warm. The wardrobe mirrors reflected the dim lamplight. He told Sarah to leave the door slightly open. The house should breathe, he said. She nodded. He lay in the bed where they had once built their life. The pearl earrings were on the bedside table. The gold ring he had given her rested beside them. He spoke softly into the quiet room. If I am coming to you, Bev, I am ready. The night was very peaceful. Outside, the oak tree leaves moved slowly in wind that no one else could hear. In the early morning, Jakey's breathing grew slower. Not afraid. Not struggling. Just finishing a long, good sentence. He smiled faintly as if remembering something. Measure twice, he whispered once. And then, very gently, he closed his eyes. Under the eternal oak tree, a woman with silver hair waited. She was holding 2 mugs of coffee. Late again, she said softly when she saw him walking toward her. He smiled. I had to make sure everything was in order. She handed him the coffee. Still strong? She asked. Always, he said. They stood together under the tree that had watched a door open so many years ago. The world below continued moving. Children grew older. Town streets changed. Roses returned every spring to the backyard of the old house. And sometimes, if sunlight entered the bedroom at exactly the right angle, people said they saw 2 silhouettes standing side by side in the mirrored wardrobe. Not perfect. Just patient. Just together. Because love, once built slowly enough, does not disappear when bodies do. It simply waits. Like a door that knows someone will knock. Long after Jake's passing, the house stood quietly beneath autumn light. The grandchildren were grown now. The town had changed even more. The coffee shop that once sold 5 lattes had expanded into 2 buildings, and sold drinks with names that young people found exciting. But the old oak tree still stood in the backyard. People said it felt peaceful near it. Sarah was the one who visited the house most often now. She was in her late 60s. Her hair had begun turning silver the way her mother's had. On one quiet afternoon, Sarah sat in the bedroom alone. The mirrored wardrobe doors were open. The sunlight was angled just right. For a long time she simply stood there. Mom. Silence answered. But Sarah did not feel alone. I think I understand now, she said. I used to think love was about finding someone who completes you. She paused. But I think you were trying to teach me something else. She touched the wooden frame of the wardrobe. Love is about choosing to stand beside someone long enough for life to change both of you. The room was very still. Outside, leaves moved slowly in wind that smelled faintly of roses even though the garden was mostly empty now. Sarah, miss you, Mom. I miss him too. Her voice was very soft. But I am not sad the way I used to be. She sat on the edge of the bed. I think I understand what you meant when you said love doesn't end just because one person leaves. She looked at the mirrored doors. In the reflection, for a moment, she imagined two figures standing there. Not young, not perfect, just patient together. Sarah spoke one last time. If someone asks me what my grandmother taught the world, I will say this. She paused. She taught us that love is not something you rush to capture. It is something you build slowly enough that it can survive your absence. The wind moved outside. The oak tree leaves rustled softly like breathing. And somewhere far beyond memory, under a tree that did not grow from soil but from time itself, a woman with silver hair sat beside a man who measured twice before cutting once. They were holding coffee, strong, warm, patient. And they were not in a hurry. Because love, when built with attention, does not fear the end of a life. It only waits politely for the next door to open. There is a place in human life where time stops trying to hurry you. It is not death. It is not even happiness. It is the moment when you understand that your story was never about reaching somewhere quickly. It was about walking long enough beside someone that your steps learned each other's rhythm. In the years after Sarah's visit to the bedroom, the house grew very quiet. Not lonely. Quiet the way old trees are quiet. The mirrored wardrobe doors were still opened every morning when sunlight entered the room. No one knew why Sarah continued opening them. Perhaps she believed light should not be trapped. Or perhaps she believed that some doors should always remain ready. One autumn afternoon, she brought her great-granddaughter to the house. The girl was 6 years old. She ran into the backyard immediately, chasing fallen leaves. Sarah sat on the porch and spoke softly. Your grandmother believed something very important, Sarah told the child. What was it? The girl asked. That love is not something you win. It is something you practice. The child thought about this. Like piano. Yes, Sarah said. Like piano. They sat in silence for a while, listening to wind move through the oak tree branches. Then the child asked a question. Did Grandma ever feel lonely? Sarah smiled gently.
Yes.
Even when Grandpa Jake was with her? Yes. Why? Because being human means sometimes carrying loneliness even inside love. The child nodded as if this made perfect sense. After a long moment she asked another question. Is Grandma still here? Sarah did not answer immediately. She looked toward the backyard. Toward the oak tree that had watched two people learn how to open a door. Finally she said, very softly. I think she is wherever someone chooses to remember kindness. The wind moved leaves across the yard like quiet applause. Inside the bedroom, sunlight reflected softly across the wardrobe mirrors. If someone stood very still and very patiently, they might have felt something warm in the air. Not a voice. Not a ghost. Just presence. Like the feeling you get when someone you love is listening to you even when they are far away. Because love does not measure existence by breath alone. It measures existence by attention. And attention, once given honestly, does not disappear. It waits. Like a door that knows someone will knock. And somewhere, in a place where age does not exist, a woman with silver hair still sits beside a man who measures twice before cutting once. They drink coffee that is always strong. They speak slowly, they laugh softly. And they are not afraid of silence. Because they learned long ago that silence is not the absence of love. It is the space where love chooses to rest. If someone asks where love goes when people grow old, do not point to graphs. Do not point to memories alone. Point instead to the small places where kindness continues without being asked. Point to the porch where coffee is placed even when no one is sitting there. Point to the bedroom where mirrored doors are opened every morning to let sunlight breathe. Point to the old oak tree that stands quietly because two people once decided that time would not scare them away. Bev did not teach the world how to avoid loneliness. She taught the world how to live beside it without fear. Jake did not teach the world how to defeat death. He taught the world how to stand beside life long enough for meaning to grow slowly. They were not extraordinary because their love was loud. They were extraordinary because their love was patient. And patience is the highest form of courage in human affection. Most stories try to end with victory. This story ends with understanding. Love is not finding a person who removes the possibility of loss. Love is finding a person whose presence makes loss meaningful enough that you are not afraid of living. At 65, a woman opened her door to a furniture delivery man. At 83, she closed her eyes knowing she had lived fully inside the life she was given. And long after both of them were gone, the mirrored wardrobe still stood in a quiet bedroom. Sometimes sunlight touched it at exactly the right angle. And if a visitor stood very still, they might feel as if someone was standing beside them, patient, kind, and waiting politely, not for the past, not for the future, but for the next heart brave enough to open the door.